Hello, my name is Michael Jones. I am the owner of Renewed Vision Counseling Services. It is my private practice I've owned for well over 11 years. In this video, we want to cover the topic of the basics of building an ethical private practice. Ever since I began my private practice, people have always asked me the question of how did you get started in building a private practice? What are some of the essential things that you need to know in order to be able to get that started? So I've been asked that question enough times now that I figured I would go ahead and do a video about it to kind of share some of the information that I have gained, so a little bit of research on it as well, and just some practical experience when it comes to building a private practice. Now, by the end of this video, you will be able to have a much better understanding of what it looks like to get into a private practice. So it may open up your eyes to say, okay, this is something I want to get into, or it may scare you away all the way together. But I did want to make sure that we cover enough material today so that you will be able to be comfortable with the idea of a private practice and have a better understanding to say, is this something that you want to do, or is this something you should shy away from? And so there are a few objectives that we want to cover in this video today. First of all, we want to understand the importance of a mission statement. Many times when we talk about private practices, the first thing people begin looking at is insurance panels and all these different things like that. Should they take cash? And all those things are really, really important. That's not to say that's a bad topic, but sometimes we miss out on the most basic part of that, which is a mission statement. So we want to talk a little bit about what a mission statement does for your practice so you can actually know where you're headed, and so you can actually reach that goal. Because many people will start out with a private practice not really having a great goal in mind of where they want to go, and then they are successful in not getting there because they don't have any place that they're actually headed into. And so we want to look at the importance of building a great mission statement, which will in turn build everything else you're going to do in your private practice. Next, we want to understand the various private practice business models. There are a multitude of models that are out there that many individuals are trying. I want to present 4 different ones I see that seem to be the most successful ones. That's something you want to get into, but we want to look at those different private practice models that you can use. Also, you want to understand what population your practice is targeting. I've seen many people who open the doors up for private practices expecting people just to rush in there, and the problem is they don't know who they're catering to. They don't know what population they're really looking to work with. So we want to help to kind of manage that a little bit in this video to kind of help you to know how to target certain populations that you're wanting to work with, to either work with when it comes to your special area that you may have. That way you can make sure you're targeting the right people as you're looking at making that private practice to grow. Also, understand marketing strategies for your private practice. In order for people to come in the door, you've got to market. You've got to be able to get people to get to that front door, and part of that is through marketing. And I'm not saying that anyone needs a marketing degree to be able to do that, but you do need to know some basics about marketing and what does it take to get someone from being in their house to be able to get them actually into your counseling office and talking to you about the things going on in their life. And so we want to talk about some few marketing strategies that you can do. Also, understand how to create a startup budget. There are many things that go into a budget when it comes to building a private practice. And once again, if you don't know how much you're going to spend or how much you need to make, then you will not be successful. So we want to talk about what that startup budget looks like and some things that you might want to consider. And also looking at some ethics of private practice, especially according to the ACA Code of Ethics, some things that they look at when it comes to private practice. So we want to cover these 6 points as we go throughout this presentation today. So first thing we want to look at is talking about your mission statement. For many individuals, when it comes to a mission statement, we usually don't really start there. And so what I want to do is kind of break a mission statement down into 3 different pieces so that you will be able to have a better idea of where you're going with your private practice. What I'm going to do in a few minutes is through this video, you might want to pause it or whatever the case may be in a few minutes, but I do want to challenge you after we go through this slide and this next slide, the slide after this, to actually go up and look up at least the mission statement for at least 5 businesses that you know that are nationally known businesses. I want you to look those things up and kind of try to apply this process I'm about to show you to the mission statement so you get a better idea of what I'm talking about. And so I think when it comes to a mission statement, one of the first things we want to talk about is what you believe. Each of one of us comes to the table with our certain set of beliefs when it comes to clients or when it comes to life in general. And that plays a big role in our mission statement that we want to have. So when as a client comes to your website or a client comes to your business, they want to know what you believe as well, because they usually want to find somebody that matches up with the same type of belief system. And when I'm talking about belief system, I'm not necessarily talking about like religious beliefs or anything like that, but what are the things that make you tick? What are the things that get you up in the morning, the things that are important to you? And so you want to make sure that you're very clear in your mission statement what you believe, because whenever you're able to get that fleshed out, and you're able to explain that to potential customers, then for them that kind of signifies for them, this is a person that I want to work with. And I think regardless of what industry that you are in, whether it is in the counseling field or the banking field or whatever the case may be, you're going to have to be able to in some way express to your potential customers what it is that you believe. And so you want to make sure that is laid out pretty clearly so that when they come to try to find out whether or not they want to connect with you, that they know what your belief is. And so for some reason we connect better with people when we have shared in similar interests and shared in similar beliefs. And so you need to know what you believe. So after you figure out what is it that you believe, the next thing you need to be clear about is what you do. Now, there are many different types of private practices that are out there. And a lot of times when people do private practice, many times they focus in just on counseling. The problem with that is that private practice can be so much more than just counseling. I know in my private practice, I do more than just seeing clients. I mean, I do enjoy seeing clients, but on top of that, I do a lot of consulting, like private practice building consulting, things of that nature. I do mental health consultations with some local schools. I also do continuing education as part of my private practice, and also do supervision as well when it comes to my private practice. So you need to let people understand what is it that you do, so when they come to you, there's not any question about it whatsoever. And so you want to make sure that that's fleshed out well in your mission statement, so that people will have a better understanding of the services that you do offer. Because if you don't get it out there, or you're not able to express what it is that you do, then what happens is people will maybe go to your website, they may read your mission statement, or they'll just go to your website in general, and if it's not very well clear on what services you actually offer, then they're going to go to somebody else who is very clear about that. And so it's important for us to be able to express what it is that we do. Also, we need to know who you serve. What population is it that you're looking to be working with? And we're going to talk a little bit more about this in a couple of extra slides after this. But you want to have a certain population that you're going to be working with. Are you specifically going to be working with children? Are you going to work with adults? Are you going to look at working with people who are dealing with trauma? Those are some things you need to be considering when you're creating this mission statement, that you make sure you have very specific about who you serve. And so if you're not working with kids, you might want to make sure in your mission statement is specifically talking about the population that you do work with. That way, once again, people are not confused by this as well. So when you put together what you believe with what you do, with who you serve, that gives you your mission statement. And something I learned a long time ago, when it comes to this mission statement, it needs to be something that you can say in 60 seconds or less. A lot of times in business that they will call that kind of like your elevator statement. Imagine you are getting on an elevator with someone, and someone looks at you and says, "Hey, what is it that you do for a living?" That's where your mission statement comes into play. You need to be able to, in 60 seconds or less, be able to say, this is what I believe, this is what I do, and this is who I serve. And that way, by the end of that 60 seconds, they have a very good picture of who you are and whether or not they want to be able to do business with you. Imagine trying to, you call a business and you're looking for a particular service. Let's say I'm looking at a carpet company, for example. and I call them, and I'm not really sure if they do industrial carpet for like businesses or they just do for the home. And so I call them and I say, can you let me know what type of services you have? And they go into this big long spiel about how long they've been in business and the different type of carpets they have, but they never really tell me if they do what type of services they build. Then I'm probably not going to work with them. I'm going to go with the person that is specific and letting me know this is exactly what we do. And so that's why that mission statement is extremely important for you to have clear and fleshed out so people can be able to look at that and know exactly what it is. So what you believe plus what you do plus who you serve equals your mission statement. Now, I took the opportunity to go and look at McDonald's mission statement. And it says this. It says McDonald's vision is to be the world's best quick service restaurant experience. Being the best means providing outstanding quality, service, cleanliness, and value so that we make every customer in every restaurant smile. Now, regardless of what you think about McDonald's, McDonald's is very clear on what they do as a business. And so we look at their mission statement, they have the 3 ingredients. What they do? They have a vision to be the world's best quick service restaurant experience. Now, regardless if that's your experience with them or not, that's what their vision is. That's what they're saying that they want to be able to do. So it's very clear there. So what do they believe? They believe that being the best means providing outstanding quality, service, cleanliness, and value. So their belief statement is right there. And so who do they serve? They said so that we make every customer in every restaurant smile. So they said they want to serve every customer and they want to do it with a smile. And so when I look at their mission statement, I have a very clear picture of what they do, what they believe, and who they serve. And this creates a very good mission statement for them. And so my challenge for you as you're doing this training, whether it's doing it right now or after you finish your training, I really want to encourage you to go and look up 5 different companies and look up and try to find their mission statement and see in their mission statement if they follow the same pattern of teaching you what they do, what they believe, and who they serve. And I think what you'll do is you'll end up finding that this is a great model of what people are doing for their mission statement. Because once again, this gives me a better idea of who they are as a company because I know specifically what they do and what I should expect out of them and who they're going to serve when I go there. And so as you're looking at your private practice and you're building your private practice, you want to make sure you have these 3 ingredients as well when you're creating your mission statement. Next, we will look at some different private practice models. Now, there are a multitude of different private practice models that are out there. I just want to focus my attention on 4 different ones, which I've seen being utilized throughout the United States and help you to kind of get a picture of what many different individuals do. Now, up in the top right-hand corner, we see the one called independent practice. And this is basically where an individual kind of steps out and they kind of put a shingle up and they have their own practice to themselves as a solo practice. And so I see a lot of people who do this. Maybe they don't want to work for an agency or whatever the case may be. And so they just kind of go out on their own and they have their independent practice. They own the business themselves. They pay for all the expenses there by themselves. But the business is really built around them and the specialty areas that they have. And so you'll see a lot of people who go into private practice and they will use this independent practice model because that is what worked well for them. Now, just because you start there at the independent practice doesn't mean you need to stay there. Some individuals will go into private practice and do the independent practice, and that's what they'll do for a long time, and they'll stay with that until their practice closes. But then some of them may end up transitioning to some of these other practices as well. Another model is what we call the group practice, and this is shared ownership. And this is where you may have 2 to 3 individuals who come together to create a group practice, but there's shared ownership. And what that basically looks like is that each of those individuals will basically split the fees evenly for the practice. So there's not just one owner of the practice. And so usually, I've seen people where there may be individuals who may come, maybe two people who had an independent practice at one time. They begin to see that they have different populations that they serve, and so they're not really competing against each other. And so they may come together and have shared ownership and start a new business together and have that group practice that they are doing. And so that group practice is another way of being able to get into private practice. Like I said, many people may start off with independent, but then transition into this group practice where there is shared ownership, and that shared ownership goes all the way down through the bills and everything as they work together. Another one, group practice we look at is full ownership. And I've seen a few people who've been able to build up to this level. Now, this is kind of like I guess we'll say is one of the higher level ones you do. And this is where you have a group practice where one person usually has full ownership of that practice, but they have employees that work for them. And so there is not really the shared cost of the business. The business really falls back on one particular person of that practice, but they pay their employees from the proceeds that either they make or some other arrangement they have created. But there is one owner of that practice, and they do have full-time or part-time employees that work for them, and so that business is built that way. And we're seeing a lot of these are popping up all over the United States, where there are a lot more group practices that are coming about. And for many individuals, this may be a long-term goal for them to be able to get to this group practice with the full ownership with employees, but that may not be the model that works for you. And for other people, they may have a group practice where one person has full ownership, but they have independent contractors that work with them. Now, the private practice that I own fits into that picture, where it is a group practice where one person, which is me, has full ownership, but the other people are on contract, and so they're independent contractors. If they want to work at another job, or the case may be, there's no issue with that, and so that is kind of built up that way. And so there's not, for these four different practice models that you have here, there's not one that is better than the other. I think the way you have to kind of look at it is what fits for where you are right now. Maybe you're starting out and you're saying, maybe I don't have all the finances I need to independently run a practice. So the group practice with the full ownership and with me being a contracted person, independent contractor, may be the best thing for me. Or maybe going to the group practice because they offer benefits, and that's maybe a good way for me to get into this private practice thing that may be to work for me. Or maybe you've done independent practice for a long time and you want to maybe transition to be able to work with at least one other person, and you may end up starting a new practice and doing that group practice with shared ownership. But these are at least the four different main models I've seen of private practice models that are out there. And once again, you have to be comfortable where you are before you make a decision on which one of these private practice models works best for you. And so this is just kind of a good way to kind of get started and look at some different models that are out there. Next, we want to talk about targeting your counseling population. There was a movie that came out it's been many years ago, and one of the taglines of the movie was, "If you build it, they will come." And that sounds great in a movie, but that doesn't always work out well in private practice. Just because you open your door and say you're doing counseling doesn't mean people are going to flock to you to be able to use your counseling services. So you've got to figure out a way to get people into your door, and before you can get people into your door, you need to figure out who you are targeting as your ideal client. I think all of us have an ideal client or ideal population that we want to work with, and so that's the ones you need to be targeting. And so the first thing I want to tell you is that you can't be all things to all people. And what I basically mean by that is you can't be the therapist that works with every person that walks through the door, because there's going to be certain populations where you don't have much training in, and since you don't have much training or expertise in that area, then you don't need to be seeing those type of people. Me, for example, I don't have a lot of experience when it comes to eating disorders. That is not a strength of mine. And so I don't advertise myself as someone who works with eating disorders, or someone calls in and they have eating disorders, then I'll end up referring them out to someone else, because I know that that's not a population that I have a lot of competence in. And so I'm going to get them to somebody that's much better than me. And I think if we can learn to be, kind of take the pride down a little bit and realize and say, you know what, I can't do this. I can't help everyone that comes through my door. Then I think that helps you to be a lot more effective, because what you'll do is you're going to find a population that you work really, really well with, and that's the ones that you want to be targeting. And which kind of leads to our next point, is where you know your strength areas. For me, one of my biggest strength areas is working with teenagers. I do not know why that is, but for some reason, I'm able to work with teenagers really, really well. And I have some colleagues who cannot stand working with teenagers. But so when it comes to my strength areas, one thing I do is I do advertise myself as someone who specializes in working with teenage issues. And it works out well for me, because in the area that I'm in, there's not a lot of people who really want to work with teenagers. And so that helps me out quite a bit. One of the things that helps me in that area is because there's a great connection I make with that certain age level population. So I feel like I connect better with them, and also adults, versus me working with kids who are under age 5. That's an area that I'm not really comfortable working with. Now, it's definitely not my strength, so I don't spend much time with those type of that population. So the best thing for you to do is to realize to know what your strengths are. What are the things that you do well? And remember, as we talked about a little bit earlier, when it comes to private practice, you're not necessarily just doing counseling. What are other things that you do well that are counseling related that you can bring into your counseling practice? And so another strength that I feel like I have, is teaching. And so that's why, as a part of my practice, I do continuing education. And so that's it's been a strength area of mine, and I use that as a part of what I do. Also, I do supervision, postmaster supervision for counselors, and being able to help people to develop counselors and to be the best counselors they can be. And so for me, those are my strengths, and so that's what I spend my time on. And sometimes you'll see with counselors where they try to do everything. They try to work with every client that comes to the door, and they get burned out quickly. And for me, it's not really worth it. And so I just try to make sure I work with the population that I enjoy working with, the ones I'm enthused about working with, the ones that really is in my strength, and it's within my scope of practice. That's what I do. And when I do that, that helps to make my counseling a lot more enjoyable. I seem a lot happier when I'm doing counseling, and I feel like my clients get a lot more out of it because they can tell from me that I'm excited to be there. So if I have a client that or working with a population that I don't have much training in, and I'm not really good at working with that population, it's going to come out in my clinical work that I do. And so that's why I said to really know what your strength areas are and to focus on those strength areas. Another thing you want to do is know what makes your practice unique. One of my specialty areas is doing telemental health counseling, or doing online counseling, whichever terminology you want to do. And that's one thing that makes my practice a little bit unique. I'm able to use, because of the training I've gone through, I'm able to do video-based counseling with clients. And this becomes a very good thing for my practice, because it kind of broadens what I'm able to do as a practitioner. And so I always encourage people to look and see what is it that what's different about your practice. Regardless of depending on what area you're in, there can be a lot of other therapists that are doing some of the same things as you are. So what makes you different? And so I try to always encourage people to look at the things that they are doing different. That way they can put that out there and let that be the thing that brings clients in for you. So maybe it's trauma, that maybe you have a lot of specialization in trauma, and that's what makes you different from everyone else in the area. That's probably the thing you want to make sure that's the population that you want to be targeting. Maybe you have a good working relationship or a lot of training in working with victims of sex trafficking, and that's what makes your practice unique. that's the thing you want to make sure you put out there so other individuals will know when they come to you that this is an area that you work with. So I think the more specialized that you can be in some ways, I think the better it helps. Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't still see general clients. I think it's always good to see generalized clients on different things. Whether the client has anxiety, depression, or whatever the case may be, still continue to see those type of clients. But you also want to make sure you have some type of specialty area that you have, because once again, that's going to make you stand out from other people in your area, and then that helps out quite a bit. Another thing you want to look at is know what is needed in your area. In the area that I'm specifically in, one thing I am noticing is there's not many people of color in my area. And so because of that, I end up getting requests for individuals who are looking specifically for a therapist who's a person of color. And so that helps out quite a bit. And so I know that's a need in my area. And so that's one of the things I kind of advertise as I try to look for the particular clients, is to know that I do accept clients who are people of color. Now, once again, obviously other therapists around here can take people of color, but I know in my area that seems to be a higher need. And so that's something that's another target area that I can use when I'm looking for potential clients, and is knowing that. Also, may be the type of, if you take insurance, it may be the type of insurance that you take. That may be one of the things that you want that makes you kind of stand out. I know in my particular area, there's not a lot of people who take the TRICARE insurance, which is for military, and so I end up getting a lot of clients through who are former or current military because I'm on that certain insurance panel, and so that's definitely needed in my area, and so that kind of once again helps me to be makes my practice unique and helps me stand out quite a bit because that's a need. So once again, I'm going to make sure I'm going to look around and see what type of things does my community need, and can I fulfill that for this community? That way I can be an active part of what's going on, and that way I'm able to provide more services in the area that I'm in. And also, don't be afraid to get additional training. I've been in mental health counseling for roughly 15 years now. And one thing I've also been beginning to see is that I have to start adding new things to my tool belt. And so I've been going back and getting training in trauma because I think it's going to be very beneficial for the clients I'm working with. And so I just always tell the therapists to don't be afraid to get additional training. So, after I graduated from my master's program and began to look at some specialty areas I wanted to do, I went back and got specialization so I could provide clinical supervision. So I'm able to do that now. I got the specialization in telemental health counseling, and so that helped me out as well. And also, like I said, in trauma training, which I'm going through currently, that helps me out too. And so it's great that I think we learn a lot of great stuff in our preparation to become a counselor. But I believe after we graduate, that's when you can once again go back and get those trainings. And I realize sometimes training they do cost money, but I look at it as being an investment into my business. It's an investment into my professionalism as well. And once again, I think it's an investment in my community when I can offer services that otherwise people could not get. And so just don't be afraid to go back and get additional training so it can help set you apart as you're trying to target your specific counseling population. Another thing we need to think about is marketing. Marketing is one of those things we just don't really talk about that much at all when it comes to counseling in general. And if I'm working in an agency, the marketing of the agency is not something is a really big concern for me because they pay somebody to do that. But when you're in a private practice and you're working in one of those four models we talked about earlier, marketing may be something that's really, really important to do that. Just buying a business card and throwing up a website is not going to be enough. There's a lot of things you need to be able to do in order to get people into the door and know what you're doing. And so a few suggestions I would like to offer here is one is to provide free services in the area. And I think in most communities there's libraries and things of that nature. So how neat would it be for you to go to a library and say, hey, I want to offer a class one night a week for 6 weeks to talk about parenting and make it free to the community, so that people can get some different skills when it comes to parenting. That may be one way of getting your name out in the community in that way. I know that when it comes to like high schools and different things like that, they're all the time looking for individuals to come in and speak on career days, things of that nature. That gets you out in the public as well. But these are free services that we do in the area in order to so that people can see who we are and what do we do. And this helps us to kind of build some community presence so that so people will know who we are and the things that we're able to do. Another thing to think about is to get to know the doctors in the area. A lot of times when it comes to mental health, when people are going in to see their medical doctors, they may complain of depression, they may complain of anxiety, whatever the case may be. And sometimes these doctors don't have anyone whatsoever to refer them to. And so I'm going to make sure I'm hitting all the local doctor's offices in the area to say, hey, you know what? I'm starting this private practice. If you have clients that come in that are dealing with depression, anxiety, I would love to be able to work with you so that they can get some help. And so maybe they could be a good referral source for you is by working with some of the doctors in the area. That way, once again, they know who you are, they know the services you provide. And the reality is a lot of people, when they go in to see the doctor, they trust the references from their doctor. And so if you are connected with their doctor and they know the services you provide, that could be a good inroad for you to be able to market yourself that way. Also, just get to know other therapists in the area. Now, for some people, this is kind of scary because they feel like, well, if I get to know the other therapists in the area, they're going to know what I know. They're going to be competing with me. And the reality of it is we're really, in a lot of ways, are not in competition with each other. There is a lot of work to be done when it comes to mental health. When I first started my whole counseling practice, and even when I was in grad school, I can remember one of my professors telling me, he says, our job is to work ourselves out of a job. And basically what they were trying to say is that we work every single day, so there won't be anyone left with any type of mental health issues, so we won't eventually have a job one day. So the reality of it is there's plenty of work to go around in just about any area you go into. And so my thing is I try to get to know who the other therapists in the area are, because once again, I need to know what their specialty areas are. So when someone comes in and they have a specialty that I don't know how to deal with, I know exactly who to send them to. And vice versa. I want them to know what my specialty areas are. So that way when a client comes in and calls in and say, hey, I need this type of service, and if they're not able to provide it, then they are able to refer over to me that way. And when you can have a good working relationship with the other therapists in the area, I think it benefits you, it benefits the other therapists, but it also benefits your community because people are getting the right type of service. And so once again, I think it's a pride issue. The less pride we have of being overly prideful about things and just simply trying to reach out to other therapists to let them know, hey, these are some things I'm doing and that I do well. What do you do well? That way we can make sure when people are coming in for services, they're getting the best possible service that they can get. And the reality is sometimes for them to get the best possible service, it may not be me who they need to see. They may need to see the person who's across the road or across the town, but there may be another client that comes in and I'm the best person for them. So I'm going to do my best to get to know other therapists in the area. Another way that I've seen people get clients or the market is talking with faith-based organizations in the area. Many individuals who are working in these faith-based organizations, they are overwhelmed when it comes to working with individuals. They may have people who come to their faith organization or to their churches, or whatever the case may be, and they don't have training in counseling, but they have some type of training and to be able to give the people solace and to help them do some of their hard times. The problem is some of these issues that they are dealing with in their faith organizations get outside of their scope of practice. And so what I want to do is be able to connect with those faith-based organizations, let them know that, hey, if you ever feel like you're spending more time working with your parishioners or whatever the case may be and individuals in your organization, and you want somebody who can be able to kind of step in and do some mental health part of it, I would be love to be able to come in and do that. And so that's where, you maybe set up maybe a lunch date with some of these different organizations. Go by there, tell them the service that you provide for them. Maybe you can even set up something where you can have almost like a referral system set up where they will send people to you for counseling services. But once again, the only way that ends up happening is if they know who you are. And so once again, you got to get your face out in that community. That way individuals know. But sometimes I think it's neat to be able to target some of those faith-based organizations in your area. Also target social service organizations that could refer you. This could be a local children's home or foster care system, or whatever the case may be. A lot of times they need training for their foster care parents or for the adoptive parents. And so maybe that could be you. Maybe you can be the person who steps in and can provide those services for them, their trainings for them. And then when the issues come up in the family where they need counseling, once again, they can put a name and a face together, and now they have someone who they can refer to. I remember there's been times where I've gone into churches before, and they've needed like a marriage seminar or whatever the case may be, and so I talk about just communication and things like that, and those things are very, very helpful for them. But then when they have couples in their church or an organization who have marital issues or communication issues, I end up being the first one that they call. So those faith-based and those social service organizations can be a really big key to get in there. And also a web presence and also social media presence is extremely important. Many people are one of the first things they're going to do is they're going to find out what your website is if you have one, and they're going to check you out prior to them coming in. And for them, it's extremely important for them to know who you are because they don't want to waste their time. And so it's important to make sure you have some type of web presence. Websites these days are getting easier and easier to be built. It's another way for you to be able to get your name out there as well. And so having some type of web presence is going to be important. And also a social media presence, whether you have a professional page, maybe on one of the social media outlets where you're giving maybe tips of the day or whatever the case may be. Maybe you have a blog where you're talking about different issues like that, or a podcast, whatever the case may be. But once again, you want to have a web presence where people once again connect your name and face to what it is that you do. And a lot of times the web presence you have is a free service that the people be able to connect with. And so I know one thing I may do on my social media, on my professional Facebook page, especially when it gets around the holidays, I may put an article up there about being alone during the holidays and coping skills for that. Or when the time changes for daylight saving time and the days are shorter, I may talk about something about seasonal affective disorder, things of that nature. And so there's a lot of different ways in which you can reach out and get out into the community. But the biggest part of it is making sure you have something you can offer them so they can once again put a name and a face together. And you can do a lot of these things relatively cheap or free, and then get your name out there. Now, obviously, there is money to be spent in this practice, which we'll talk about that here in a couple of minutes. But there are a lot of free ways to market yourself to be able to get out there into the public, so the public knows exactly who you are. Next, we just want to talk about startup budget. One of the things I always try to encourage people to do when they are going to start a private practice is to sit down first and do the numbers before you begin to do anything else. We've talked already about your mission statement, so it's great. You got your mission statement. We've talked about your targeting your area. We've talked about your marketing and everything. Now we have to look at the financial piece of it. And one of the things that we sometimes forget, and I'm not sure why the mentality is, for some reason as mental health professionals, we don't like talking about money. It's scary. We go into this into this business to help people, and that's a great thing for us to help people. But there's nothing wrong or illegal or unethical about you actually making money in what you do, because at the end of the day, you are running a business, and so that's you have to keep that mindset going all the time, that I am doing a business. And since you are running a business, you need to make sure you're prepared to do it in the right way. And so what I want to show you on this startup budget here, once again, this is not an exhaustive list, but these are a few things that you need to be thinking about when it comes to your startup budget. Number one is going to be advertising. Where are you going to spend your advertising dollars for your business? This is going to be extremely important for you. I've seen many people who use social media advertising, and that's where they spend their advertising dollars. Some people use things like Google AdWords. That's where they spend their advertising dollars. Maybe it's local magazines, newspapers, things of that nature. But you've got to figure out where you're going to spend your money. And the thing about it, when it comes to advertising, you have to realize that when you're putting your information out there and you're trying to get people to come in, it's going to cost you something to bring people in. And that's what that term ROI or return on investment comes in. That when you are making this investment in your company, you're going to spend money you're going to spend some money, but you want to make sure you don't spend so much that when clients come in that you're not actually making anything. And so, breaking even is not a good thing. You want to thrive, because when you're able to thrive, then you're able to help more people in this whole business end of it. So advertising becomes a big piece of what we're doing. And so you want to make sure you look at all the different options you have out there. And there are multiple websites that you can go to to advertise, like I said, and Google, different things like that. There's a lot of ways of doing that. There are online therapy directories that you can use, pay for services where they will advertise for you. But whatever that looks like, you will make sure that you have some type of money in your budget for advertising. Another thing is a private practice coach. One thing I always suggest to individuals is, if you're going to jump into a private practice, do it slowly and do it with someone who knows what they're doing and has done it before, and make a budget for that. Because the reality of it is, you can get out there and you may think you know what's going to happen, but a private practice coach can really help you to get to that next level, where they can help you to kind of get everything set up in the right way before you get in there. One thing I've seen over and over again is, individuals they'll go to school, they will graduate from their programs, and as soon as they graduate, they will go directly into private practice, and they have no clue what they're doing. They realize that they can't take insurance depending on what state they're in. They can't take any type of health insurance, and so they're cash pay only. But they don't have a market that they want to get into. They're not really sure about what type of population they're going to work in, and so they find a cheap place to rent. They run into there, buy all this furniture, spend thousands and thousands of dollars, take out loans, and then within 6 months to 2 years, they are out of business and they are still owing money because they never really found that good middle ground. And so I think hiring a good private practice coach is going to be helpful. And there are a lot of great ones that are out there who can help you to get where you need to be, so you can get your private practice built up in the right way. Another thing is office space and utilities. Now, just thinking of office space is an extremely, extremely important thing for you to think about, because there's a lot of things you have to consider when it comes to office space. Making sure you have a place that's easy to find, that makes a big difference. Also, when it comes to the office space, is it something that where you having to pay to build it out, or is it already set up in such a way where you can basically is it move-in ready? So there's a lot of things you have to consider when it comes to office space. If you're going to be offering a group practice, are you going to rent a space that has multiple rooms, or are you just going to start with one room? So that office space becomes a big deal. If you're maybe renting an office from another individual, you have to think about privacy concerns, which we'll talk about here in a few minutes. And so that office space becomes a big deal. And once with an office space, you have to think about utilities, because there's a lot of utilities that go into that. You have to have office furniture. That's kind of helpful sometimes. You want to make sure that you're thinking about your internet, if your internet services, and be able to have if you're going to have just have an internet in general, so you can be able to conduct business. Electricity, water, all those type of things that you have to have in order to just run a business. You have to be able to look at that. And so whenever you're looking at office space, if some of these utilities are included, great. But if they're not, you might want to check around first and see how much these type of things cost you in order for you to get into that practice. And so that's going to help you get a better picture of that. We've talked about furnishings a little bit already. You want to make sure you have nice furnishings for people to come into, where they come to a calming environment. Am I going to have to paint the office before I move into it? Who's responsible for the maintenance of the building or the room that I'm renting out? Am I able to rent this out by the hour, or am I going to be rented out by the month? And what type of contract am I going to be locked into? All those things becoming very important when you're thinking about your office space, and especially with furnishings too, is making sure that you have something that fits the space that you're in. Also, you want to consider liability insurance as well. You got to think about your personal liability insurance. I always encourage people to make sure they have liability insurance that covers them as a person. That way, if there's ever any type of lawsuit or whatever the case may be, you'll be prepared to deal with that. But also liability insurance for the business as well. So maybe I'm renting out an office space or renting out a space, and someone slips and fall and hurt themselves on the floor. Does that place have insurance that's going to cover them, or is that something that you're going to have to cover? And so with my business, I have personal liability insurance that covers me as a practitioner, but also insurance that covers the building as well. If something was to get stolen from my office, or if someone was to get hurt from my office, all those things are think about that as well. Also, savings. It's extremely important to make sure you have some type of savings for your practice, that you're putting money back. The reality of private practice is that it's always in flux. There's going to be some months where you are booming and you're going to think you're the greatest therapist in the world because clients are coming in, come to the door quickly. And there are going to be other months where clients are just not going to come in, whether it's weather-based, maybe it's just a time of year, whatever the case may be. And so you have to make sure you kind of set up a part of your budget to figure out how much money do I need to save each month for those lean months. And so you want to make sure that you have that kind of sketched out as well. And so that's going to be important for you. Also, self-employment tax. I'm not going to get into the legal aspects of this too much, but in general, depending on what type of business you end up setting up, there's different tax brackets you may find yourselves in. And so you want to make sure that you have money set back for taxes, because if you make money, the government wants you to pay taxes on that money. It's just one of those simple things of life that we have to go through. So you want to make sure that you are keeping back enough money to be able to cover any of the money that you have made for the year. So that'd be something you want to consider. Also, if you do have a website, how much is it going to cost to maintain that every single year? That's something you want to consider. And also, when it comes to accountant or accounting software, some people will have an accountant on retainer to help them to go through all their money and everything. So that's something you want to consider as part of your budget. Or you might want to look at accounting software, or if you want to do it yourself, look at accounting software. And there's a lot of great accounting software out there to help you to run the business yourself if you feel comfortable enough doing that. But all these things are a part of your startup budget. But the one thing I haven't mentioned yet is you also have to ask yourself the question, how much money do I need every day to survive? Because that is really the bottom line that you have here, that once you have your budget and you figure out how much you're going to be spending out, that's going to then now translate into, okay, now that I know how much this is going to cost for me to even have this business open, how much money do I have to have coming in so that I can pay all these bills, but also to make a livable income as well. And so I know many people will do a calculator where they'll basically look and see how many clients they need to do per week, especially, and then they try to work in a vacation in there. So they usually will build their budget off of either a 48-week or a 50-week budget. And what that does is, if you build off a 48-week, then that helps you to, if you want to take off some time throughout the year, your budget is built upon that. Or if you want to base off a 50-week, it gives you 2 weeks off during a year. But I would always advise people to stay away from doing a 52-week budget, because you are inevitably, you're going to get sick, or you're going to need to take off some time, whatever the case may be. So as you're setting those budgets up, either that 48 or that 52-week budget, it seems to be a good starting place for you to know exactly how much you need to have coming in for that startup budget. Next, we just want to talk about some of the ethics of private practice. This is coming from the ACA Code of Ethics. There are some few ethical things we want to make sure we want to consider when we're thinking about building a private practice. One of the things the ACA Code of Ethics talks about is fee splitting is prohibited. Now, there is a lot, and I mean a lot of controversy when it comes to fee splitting, because there's always that question of what exactly is fee splitting. So for some individuals, they look at fee splitting as that, maybe the owner of the business gets a certain part of the money when the client comes in, and the practitioner gets the other part. Some people look at fee splitting that way. Other people look at fee splitting as basically where they're getting paid for a referral. And so I think one of the things you definitely want to make sure you do is making sure that you are not directly or indirectly taking money for a referral. I think that's kind of the best way one of the best ways to look at that code of ethics there. And so if a doctor is sending me clients, then I'm not sending a check to the doctor for all the people that they sent to me, because what I'm doing is I'm basically paying for referrals. So we don't want to do that, to pay for referrals for our businesses, because the Code of Ethics is saying that is unethical to be able to do that. So just to kind of be mindful of that. Some of the other ethics we want to think about is about third-party payments. Not everybody, some people will take insurance in their private practices, and some people will go with self-pay clients. And so we want to make sure that we know the ins and outs of both of those. For when it comes to self-pay, you want to make sure that that you have what I would say a fair rate to be able to charge people when they come in there, and also knowing whether or not you're going to do a sliding scale or not going to do a sliding scale. That becomes a real big issue for some people. Maybe they can't afford your fee that you are charging. So the question then becomes, do you not see them because of that, or do you have a sliding scale? That's something you might want to offer on the front end. And also, when it comes to third-party payments, you have to look very closely at your contracts that you have, because some of those contracts will actually prohibit you from being able to share what you make with other practitioners when it comes to their reimbursement rates. And in some other ways, some of them also will not allow you to charge less for your self-pay clients than you do for what they're paying you as a third-party payment. So the biggest thing here is to be ethical is make sure you read those contracts closely when you sign those contracts, to make sure that you're doing everything that you can to honor those contracts. That way that you're able to provide service in an ethical manner that way. Also, pro bono clients, depending on your background, whether you are a marriage and family therapist or professional counselor or a social worker, whatever the case may be, when it comes to providing services, many of the codes of ethics talk about being able to take on some pro bono clients. And I think this is a good thing. I think it's a good and ethical thing to do when it comes to pro bono clients. There are some individuals who are not able to provide, who are not able to afford counseling services. So it may be a thing where you have a certain number of pro bono slots that are set up for individuals to be able to provide services for them. And so you just want to kind of look into that and see if that's a possibility for you to be able to do that. But I just think it's good practice for us to be able to give back to our communities in that way when it comes to offering some pro bono clients. So it may be a thing where you say, okay, I've got 3 slots, and once these 3 slots are filled, I'll see those clients for how many times I need to, and then once those clients go out, I may take in and refill those slots again. But I think each practice should be, ethically speaking, taking in some pro bono clients as a way to give back. And like I said, each code of ethics talks about that to a certain extent. I know the social work ethics specifically talk about that. ACA code of ethics talks about it as well. Also, shared office space, and when it comes to privacy, that's one thing you also need to consider about is ethics. Am I breaking client confidentiality and privacy by sharing office space? And so we have to be really careful about that. That if I have an office where I'm sharing it with maybe a different profession, or if I'm sharing it with another therapist, does that therapist have the right to know who's coming into the office? And so maybe a thing where a business associate agreement needs to be signed, where when anytime anybody comes to the office, regardless of who client it is, that those individuals are keeping silent about the things that happen in that office space. And so that's when the privacy becomes a big issue when you're sharing office space with anybody else. And so you want to make sure you are taking care of it and looking at those privacy concerns as well. And also client records. Who has access to client records? That once again becomes a privacy thing. A lot of people now are going to electronic health records, which I think helps out quite a bit. And people are starting to stay away from the traditional paper records that we used to do. Because when you think about a paper record and leaving records inside a filing cabinet, those things are very easy to get into, and you're really it's not really protecting the client information that well. And so there are a lot of great electronic health records that are out there now that you can use as a practitioner to make sure you're maintaining the privacy of your clients. And so ethically, you want to make sure that you're looking out for software that does that. You want to look at software that is HIPAA compliant or HIPAA secure, and use it in a HIPAA compliant manner so that your client records stay safe. But these are just a few ethical concerns you want to make sure that you look at as you're looking into getting into private practice. When it comes to books, here are a couple of recommended readings I would definitely suggest to anybody in private practice. The first one's by Holly Hunt. It's called The Essentials of Private Practice, Streamlining Costs, Procedures, and Policies for Less Stress. This was one book that I used when I was building my private practice, and it's been very beneficial for me in building the private practice. So that's one I always suggest people to use as Essentials of Private Practice. And the other one is by Lynn Grodsky, which is called Building Your Ideal Private Practice. This is now in its 2nd edition. And these 2 books together have been very helpful for me to learn some of the ins and outs of private practice, to help me to kind of build what I've built already, and help you to get the basics down, but also to expand those services that you're offering in your private practice. And so it goes a lot more in depth in this whole idea of having a great private practice. So, closing advice, what are some things that you should do? First of all, I would say do your homework. Go back and look at your budget, things like that, and kind of go through these slides again, and make sure you're doing your homework before you jump in it. I know there are a lot of people out there who are super excited about starting a private practice, and that is great. I think that's a good thing to want to do that. But make sure you do your homework first. Sit down and do the numbers. Know who you're going to work with. Have all that information built out first before you jump into doing a private practice. Because when you do that, it helps you to be prepared better, and that way you can know exactly what you're going to get into. Also, take your time when you're doing this. One service I offer is that I do private practice coaching, and so that's a service that I offer to many individuals. And the reason why I do that is because I've made mistakes in the past, and I've learned from those mistakes. And so I'm going to try to help individuals out as much as I possibly can. So as I talked about earlier, you want to make sure you find a good a private practice coach if you can to do that. But take your time when you're looking for a coach, and also take your time getting into this. because the thing about it is, if you're going to be spending money to get into private practice, you want to make sure that money is well spent. So take your time and do it the right way the first time. That way you're not wasting a lot of time and effort and energy trying to get into something that can work out to be a great and beautiful thing for you. And finally, know what you are worth. I think one of the things, we talked about this a little bit briefly, is that sometimes we undervalue the work that we do. But personally, I feel like this is the best field in the world to be into. We're working with people who have different issues and problems in their lives, and they're trying to find somebody to help them to work those out. And so don't undersell yourself. If you have a specialty area that no one else has, remember that as you're advertising for that. Know what you're worth when you're trying to get yourself out there. Because I think I've seen too many people who will start practices, they undercut themselves, they make their prices way too low, and they end up getting a lot of people coming in, but they end up burning themselves out because they didn't go about it the right way. So just knowing what you're worth as a therapist and knowing how much you need to be able to get by and to be able to build your practice successfully is going to be a beneficial thing for everyone that is involved. Because if you do your practice the right way, you'll be less stressed. You're going to be providing better quality services. The clients that come in, they're going to get better services when they come in, and that serves our community a lot better. And it will, hopefully, will take away some of the negative stigma that is surrounding mental health counseling. And I think if we all will strive to do that, then we'll do great. So I hope this helps you on your journey towards building your private practice. Once again, this is not an exhaustive study of this, but I hope this gave you a better idea of what it's going to take to get yourself into a private practice, to get that process started. If you have any specific questions or comments that you need any help with, please don't hesitate to reach out to me and to contact me, and I will do my best to kind of answer some questions for you. Or if you're looking for a private practice coach, we can talk about that as well. Hope that you all are having a great day.